Hi everyone. Going through all the books that I've read over the past couple of years, I remember uh, saying in one of the videos that what I wanted to do was upload a review of all of the books that I've read. It's not really an enormous number of books. It might be something like 80 or 100 that I've read over the past couple of years. But there are some, when I look at them on my bookshelf, nothing really strikes me as far as having to say something about them. Some of them are average, and I, they didn't really stand out in my mind, and I didn't really have anything to say about them at the time, and I didn't really uh, particularly want to bore anyone on YouTube with saying something about them here either. So what I've done is sort of going back through them and looking at them. I've picked the ones that stood out to me in memory, and the ones that I thought said something really interesting or that are worth looking at. And I read this one a couple of years ago. My book reads profile shows that I wrote the review of it on October 19th, 2010. And this is Milan Kundera's, I believe it's his latest volume of essays. Still his latest, I think. It's called Encounter. And it's his newest foray into the essay, and it continues his critical engagement with the history and aesthetic of the European novel and the place and importance of art today, especially the literary art, but not solely the literary art. It has 4 longer essays, which are about 15 to 20 pages apiece, and several shorter ones. On the longer ones are on the art of Francis Bacon, the 20th century artist, an homage to Anatole France, the French novelist, the artistic sensibilities of several particular Martinician poets, especially Aimé Césaire, and Curzio Malaparte's novel *The Skin* is what the last one is about. Most of these essays, however, are occasional pieces with which rarely exceed 4 or 5 pages long, and because of their length, they're almost necessarily underdeveloped and sort of embryonic, which makes the book less successful, I think. But if you're familiar with any other of Kundera's non-fiction essays, his criticism, especially The Curtain, or I'm forgetting the one he came out with a number of years ago, probably in the 70s or 80s, but he's, I think, probably even a better essayist than he is a novelist. He's incredibly insightful and also incredibly well read, and takes, even though I haven't necessarily enjoyed his novels so much, he takes his craft incredibly seriously, and that's why he is such a great essayist. They always have this sort of cool analytical approach, the essays do, that would have greatly benefited the ideas that were lavished upon them if they would have been in longer essays. If anything, that would have been the one thing that I would change about this collection. But having said that, there are a great number of things that are of real interest in this book, I think. In the first substantial essay, the one on Bacon, he states a distinct paradox that all artists confront in the pursuit of their craft, which is, how does one capture the essence of a human being? In this case, the work in question is Bacon's triptych of Henrietta Moraes, whose very essence he claims is accidental. And Kundera's answer is that Bacon distorts and contorts the images of people, as he famously did in many of his works, to see what someone can have done to them but still maintain their identity. So he's basically saying that Bacon's work pushes the limits of identity through distortion. And Kundera calls this Bacon's brutal gesture. Another one of the more interesting pieces is called The Comical Absence of the Comical, in which he discusses how our mundane understanding of the word comic as, quote, provoked by something amusing or comical is incomplete. Sadly incomplete. He examines several instances in the novels of, in this case, Dostoevsky, in which characters laugh in the most awkward and tragic of circumstances, as when in the novel The Idiot, Prince Mishkin is castigated by Aglaia, another character in the novel, by a severe laughter for having the bad taste to fall asleep while waiting for her. And he notes that this is not a laughter whose provenance is in the human sense of the comic, but rather one that punishes and desituates and reorganizes our very response to the scene that Dostoevsky is writing about in the first place, which I thought was a really interesting thing to think about. The extended essay on the work of Anatole France, while thematically sort of disorganized and rather discursive, is largely an aspect of an account of certain aspects of France's novel, The Gods Are Thirsty. And the essay also incorporates a surrealist critique of France, spearheaded by Paul Valéry, who would later fill France's chair at the Académie Française upon the novelist's death. André Breton's critique impugned France for his, quote, skepticism, realism, and heartlessness, though Kundera makes an intelligent argument for France's cohabitation of unbearably dramatic history with unbearable banal dailiness and a cohabitation that sparkles with irony. That's a direct quote, those aren't my words. These interesting juxtapositions, as mentioned above, perennially interest Kundera throughout the collection, as when, in a highly thoughtful essay on the work of Leos Janáček, the composer, Kundera concludes that Janáček has managed to say what only an opera can say: the unbearable nostalgia of insignificant talk at an inn, and here he's referencing a scene from Janáček's Cunning Little Vixen, cannot be expressed any other way than by opera. The music becomes the fourth dimension of a situation which, without it, would remain anodyne, unnoticed, mute. In the last paragraph of the entire book, Kundera ties together two of the themes that have informed not just this collection of his essays, but an entire body of work: the history of Europe and the perceived profound ordinariness of truth. And these are his words, an extended quote to In the Review 1. The war's closing moments bring out a truth that is both fundamental and banal, both eternal and disregarded. Compared with the living, the dead have an overwhelming numerical superiority, not just the dead of this war's end, but all the dead of all times, the dead of the past, the dead of the future. Confident in their superiority, they mock us. They mock this little island of time we live on, this tiny time of the new Europe. They force us to grasp all its insignificance, all its transience. Milan Kundera's volume of literary and artistic essays, which he came out with a few years ago, Encounter.